All right, I come on here to do a not so surprising update involving the case involving Mikayla Miller. Now, if are not familiar with this story, she was the young black girl in Massachusetts whose body was found in the woods a day after she was jumped by five teens. Well, it looks like my hunch was right, and the thing is, it's not so surprising that that was my hunch from the get go. And something just told me, I said, watch, they're going to rule this a suicide so they don't have to investigate this situation. And sure enough, that's what came out. Because on May 19, 2021, they officially came out and ruled that her death was a suicide. I am not surprised by that. They do this all the time. And again, she was lynched. She was found in the woods hanging. And they ruled it a suicide, just like they do with every other black person who's found lynched. Literally lynching. That's why I said, watch, that's what they're going to rule is. I said I would have been pleasantly surprised if they would continue, if they were to go forward with this. See, they do this so they don't have to investigate anything, and it lets the actual murderers get off the hook. And let me remind you, I think they said she was the only black girl that was with that group, if I'm not mistaken. The rest were white. It reminds me of that story that was in South Carolina where you had that black boy who went off with his friends, his so-called friends, on a boat. And all the other so-called friends were white. And they all went out together, but they all didn't come back. And by all that didn't come back, I meant the black boy didn't come back. And then when they were questioning all of the people that was with him, they all gave different stories. Like none of their stories were the same. And they ruled his death a suicide. And all of them got off the hook. I'm sure y'all remember that story. It came out about 2 years ago now. It's amazing how time flies. But I think it was about 2 years ago because I don't think we was in the pandemic at the time. And it happened in South Carolina. And so many other stories where black people were found lynched literally, and they say, oh, it was a suicide. So when they said that she was found literally lynched in the woods, I said, they're going to rule this a suicide so they don't have to investigate. That's how deep rooted and dark their code is. I give it to them, they get on code, but it's a very, very dangerous code to be on. Well, for them, they're used to it. But it's a very dangerous code to be on. The fact that their code works so well is because they pretty much run the damn society. If they didn't run the society, their code would not work that well. But I'm going to go ahead and get into this article. The death of a 16-year-old named Mikayla Miller has officially been ruled a suicide. Mikayla's body was found by a jogger in the woods near her home in Hopkinton, Massachusetts on April 18th. The day before she was found, her mother reported to police that she had been jumped by five other teens, which raised questions as to whether she was murdered as whether or not investigators in the case were doing their jobs to the best of their abilities. Exactly. They weren't doing their jobs. They just ruled it a suicide. Let us remind everyone that she was found on April 18th. The day before, on April 17th, she was murdered. We didn't learn of this story until like 2 weeks ago. So a couple of weeks or more than 2 weeks had already passed by the time we even heard of this story. So they were already fixing a story to come out with by the time this time rolled around. They already put in there, ingrained in their mind, they were going to rule this a suicide from jump. NBC News reports that the Middlesex District Attorney's Office announced the findings of the medical examiner's office Tuesday. While the investigation into the cause of Mikayla's death has concluded that she died by suicide, specifically asphyxia by hanging, according to WCVB5, the DA's office said in a statement that its investigation into the events surrounding Mikayla's death remains active and ongoing, and that it will continue to explore every investigative angle necessary as we do that work, and intend to issue a complete and thorough report at the conclusion of the investigation. At this point, it's pointless. They already ruled it a quote-unquote suicide. So whatever they find, it won't even matter to go forward and even press charges against those involved. Remember, these are the same type of people that said Kendrick Johnson committed suicide. A boy who rolled himself into a thick-ass wrestling mat with his shoes off and his face disfigured and his head open. And we're supposed to just accept that. And they just, after a few years, so many years of fighting endlessly, his family was able to finally get that case reopened. And I'm like, they shouldn't have even had to fight that long for that, because that you could look at that boy's face and tell he did not commit suicide. They actually really expected us to believe that. So if they'll say he committed suicide, anything is possible. As previously reported, many in the Hopkinton community, including Mikayla's mother, Calvina Struthers, raised concerns that authorities weren't taking the investigation into the teen's death seriously. Oh, they weren't. But then again, they don't take the death of black people in this situation seriously, period. Had this been a little white girl of the same name, or Michelle, they would have really thoroughly looked into this. Hell, look at what happened with Natalie Holloway back in 2005. They went through the edge of the earth to find the guy who murdered her. They made sure we knew about Natalie Holloway every single day. And before her was the one that was involved with who was that guy? Sandra, was it Sandra Levy? I'm taking it back on y'all, and I'll take it further back. John Benet Ramsey, back in 1996. Even though many speculate that her parents had something to do with that, or her brother. But we ain't gonna get into that. We gonna stay focused on this. Let's see. Struthers' concerns appear to mainly revolve around the fact that she was told immediately that her daughter's death was a suicide, and she felt it was a rush to rule it that way. It was a rush. They do it all the time. That's why I said when I found out that she was found hanging, I knew they were going to come back with the suicide verdict or the suicide ruling. That was too easy. Because see, with this, they can easily say it's a suicide. It's not like she was stabbed to death or she was shot or anything like that, where they couldn't say it was a suicide. Although with the shooting thing, remember the one with the black guy in the car and in the police cruiser with his hands cuffed behind his back, and he somehow managed to miraculously get a gun and blow his brains out. And they actually ran with that, and they actually got away with that too. If they had not had immediately made a conclusion regarding my child's death and did a proper investigation, we wouldn't be here, Struthers said during a vigil and rally for Mikayla that took place in Hopkinton earlier this month. According to NBC, District Attorney Marion Ryan denied all allegations that investigators aren't doing a thorough job, as well as any suggestions that Mikayla's case is being mishandled because she was a black member of the academy. Ryan called the allegations painfully false. So now, because I forgot that Mikayla was a member of the academy, and she is a black girl, or was a black girl. So she was on the double spectrum. So I need to know from those in the academy, what do they have to say about this? And preferably the ones who are palm colored. I know they ain't going to say nothing, but I just figured I'd throw that out there because, I thought they were all for, equal rights and everything like that. Here you have one of your own, who met her in at what they claim to be a suicide, which I highly doubt it was. Because let's think about it. She got jumped by 5 teens the day before. Like, really? And based on how her mother was describing her, she said she doesn't describe her as a person who's attempted suicide before. She didn't have suicidal thoughts. She was murdered. I don't give a damn what their investigation says. Murdered. Murdered. Ryan's office has said that cell phone records from the night Mikayla was last seen show she traveled 1,316 steps between 9 and 10 p.m. and those steps are roughly the same distance from her home to the location where her body was found. Her office said an investigation showed the teen was in an alleged physical altercation with 2 of 4 teens who were at the recreation room on April 17th, and a 15 was outside in a car. Her office said that investigators were able to confirm that the five were in other places the night that Mikayla was last seen. I said that doesn't mean anything. They could have found someone else to do it that was not there. Like, did they put their thinking caps on? Did not think I don't even think they even questioned the ones that was there. At least not the way they should have been. It says Ryan earlier this month pledged that once the investigation is over and with permission of Mikayla's family, she would release every shred of legally releasable information. Mikayla's family might still be unconvinced that the teen died by suicide. I'm not even related to her, and I'm unconvinced that she died by suicide. According to WCVB, Struthers will be joined by a civil attorney. Here we go. Ben Crump, on Wednesday for a virtual news conference to discuss the case publicly. An advisory announcing the meeting reportedly claims Mikayla could not have killed herself, and it calls her death a potential murder. Yeah, no, I don't believe that suicide crap. But like I've said, whenever a death happens like this, they immediately run with oh, it was a suicide. I'm trying to figure out, how does someone hoist themselves up like that into a tree and then hang themselves with a noose? Like, how does one do that? And the thing is, what did they find in her book bag? Because they said that I think that she had a book bag or something like that. What was in her book bag? Did she have was it remnants of a rope in there? What was in her backpack or that bag she had with her? See, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered here, but they're not going to try to answer them. That's why they're concluding that she died by suicide, and that is a damn lie. She did not. I don't believe a word they say. And let's not forget that this is in Massachusetts, home of the city of Boston, one of the most racist places in the Northeast. So I'm not even surprised by this at all. But I will not ever believe. They may not see, the thing is, by them ruling this a suicide, they're basically putting the nail on the case right here. It's not going to go for it. So whoever did this to her just got away with murder. And the thing is, we probably will never know who did it. But I'm telling you, those teams that jumped her are involved somehow, some way. And I stand by that. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.